Hi, everyone, and welcome once again to the Legal Lunch Byte. Today, we're hosting episode 14, and I am delighted to have with me Aaron Pelley, one of the newest additions to our firm. So why don't we start right there? Aaron, could you tell us a bit about who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, my name's Aaron. I've been in cannabis pretty much since before legalization. I used to represent the medical cannabis community, and as all my outlaws started to transition to become businessmen, I too needed to kind of transition into that area. And then for the last 16, 15 years, I've been working kind of in cannabis consistently in one regards or another, mostly on the West Coast. But today we're not even talking about the West Coast. We're talking about the big things that happened in Florida this year. And you've given me permission to ask you and pretend like I'm the host. So when was the last time you got to tell people about yourself, Fred?
I don't remember. So let me go ahead and do that. I don't know that I've ever done that on this esteemed live stream, but sure. So my name's Frederic Rocafort. I am based in Florida, and my practice is primarily focused on intellectual property, within that trademarks and copyright. But I also get involved in other practice areas at the firm, a lot of our international work, and anything with a Florida angle, since not only am I here in the Sunshine State, but I'm also licensed here. So yeah, those are my relevant credentials for today's conversation.
That was very humble. I know that you have a ton more behind you because you are the quintessential international lawyer, but we could have filled the whole half hour with the things you've done. But so Fred, you kind of have been there in Florida on the ground since the beginning of what's been going on with medicinal and recreational. Kind of what's the landscape been like for the last 8-10 years with Florida cannabis?
Sure. So medicinal cannabis was legalized a few years ago. I'm a little bit hazy right now on when exactly it was, but right around the middle of the last decade, I think that was when it came online. And basically the model here in Florida revolves around the MMTCs. What is it? Medical Marijuana Treatment Centers. There's certainly been a fair amount of criticism regarding that model. There are those who point out that the barriers to entry are quite high for new entrants, and certainly, I guess it's fair to say that there's a certain corporatization of the landscape here in Florida. But nonetheless, that's been an option for Floridians, who want access to medical cannabis, and efforts to legalize adult use cannabis have been going on for quite some time. And it's been a very frustrating process, not only, I would say, for those who have a direct stake in the future of cannabis in Florida, but I think more generally for those of us who believe in fairness and want to see things done in a proper way. I think that the road to legalization was unduly blocked at times in ways that were really, at least in my view, not consistent with a proper system of governance. There was a lot of focus on little words that were perhaps not as not the right words. There was a lot of that going on, like, well, this word could mean this, could mean that. And I can talk a little bit about the specifics, but basically we're now at a point where finally the Supreme Court of Florida has given the green light to a ballot initiative. They struck down earlier attempts to get these initiatives on the ballot. Finally, we were able to we've been able to get. I mean, the Floridians, have been able to get language that passed muster by the court, and we'll be voting on that in November.
So there was enough people at least on board to get this on the ballot in terms of an initiative, and then it got jammed up by the Attorney General and then a couple of other folks. Was that I didn't follow who the other two people were that kind of came forward. I suspect they were either interested parties that didn't want legalization, or they were interested parties that were in the medical side that didn't want the competition. But the legal issues that it really was like hair splitting on like what the word allows means and things like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of, let's say, official opposition, let's just call it that, opposition from the government side. Well, for anyone who tracks Florida politics, it won't be that surprising that our governing class is not crazy about the prospect of legalization, and the Attorney General certainly did all she could, all that her office could do to prevent these initiatives from making it onto the ballot. The governor, my own take is that he's not perhaps as deeply opposed to legalization, but especially when he was still in the running for the presidency, I think there was a calculation that he was making in terms of his appeal to a nationwide audience that resulted in him perhaps being a little more vocal when it came to cannabis. And at least the sense that I get is that some of that opposition sort of fizzled out a bit. Once Ron DeSantis's presidential dreams came to a halt, at least for now.
Sure.
So there was, it's not hard to understand really where that opposition comes from. There was also opposition. I know that one of the parties that opposed the initiative was the Florida Chamber of Commerce, and always struck me as strange in the sense that, well, I mean, you have a ballot initiative that could potentially do quite a bit to help commercial activities in Florida, right? Bring
Right.
a lot of activity that is already taking place into the legal fold, and make it taxable, make it allow it to become more of an engine economic engine here in Florida. But nonetheless, they had their opposition to it. The way that the proposed amendment is phrased, the medical marijuana treatment centers are going to be allowed. In fact, they are this was precisely one of the issues that came up during the legal fight. Even though there is language there that envisions broadening the scope of entities that can legally sell cannabis, the initial beneficiaries will be the medical cannabis players, because they're going to be able to move into adult use right away. And in fact, they were strong supporters of the measure. But I do think that primarily, my take is that the opposition was primarily ideological. Even now, even the opinion from the court cannot get away from this tone. And I think as I'm sure you've been exposed to this more than I have, but I think we both have seen sometimes when you're working on cannabis issues, there's just this somewhat annoying tone that frames the conversations. And I see a lot of that here, even when, for example, just to stick to that example of the opinion of the court. I mean, it's basically saying, sure, we're going to get this on the ballot. We're going to allow this to go on the ballot. But there's all these little digs there, like, this might not be the most prudent thing to do. Floridians really need to think about this, but hey, what can we do? So there's a lot of that. I think that culturally in the state there is still a certain segment of the population that just is viscerally opposed to cannabis legalization. For those of us who have spent quite a bit of time in the out west, I used to live in Seattle. It does seem a little strange. It can be bewildering at times. But looking ahead, trying to be optimistic, we'll have a chance to vote in November. A supermajority of 60% is required, which means it's going to be tight. If it was a 50%, or simple majority, I think it's pretty clear that it would pass. 60%, it's really up in the air, but hopefully it'll go through, because I do think this is a very promising market.
Are they adding any issues, or do you know on the voting of it, whether they're adding anything that's beyond so for example, in Washington, one of the things they did was they said, hey, we're going to legalize cannabis, but hey, don't worry about people driving under the influence. We're creating a law over here in regards to that, and a lot of guardrails that kind of came right with the initiative. We're going to put certain limits on things. Did they do anything in that with this initiative that you're aware of, or is that some of the issues that they were arguing about?
So with the initiative itself, as we've discussed, right? I mean, there was so much scrutiny over the language, and every word was parsed, multiple times. So it's actually relatively narrow in terms of what it proposes. We'll have to see. And by the way, I mean, it is going to, technically speaking, it's going to amend the constitution of the state. So obviously there's the subject matter that is appropriate for that is relatively limited, right? I mean, there are things that would probably be more suitable for additional laws and for the regulations that will surely come into play. There is, however, even before the Supreme Court handed its decision, there was a bill introduced to limit THC content, and it was specifically framed as let's say as a contingency in case the initiative was placed on the ballot and there was a positive vote. Some in the legislature want to start putting caps already on what can be done. So we'll have to see what happens with that. It'll be interesting to see what kind of interplay there could be down the line, where if we do have a favorable vote on legalization, right? I mean, I wonder if perhaps someone might challenge that legislation, saying, look, that's incompatible, right? I mean, you have this language enshrined in the constitution of the state now. These limitations, don't seem to make any sense. But I'm sure, I'm sure that we'll see all sorts of attempts to limit what can be done. At the same time, I also have a feeling that once legalization is underway, assuming that it does, and we start seeing the economic impact, I would not be surprised if all of a sudden our officialdom becomes rather enthusiastic about what the future could hold, and maybe they just start backing off a little bit. And who knows? It could. I mean, I'm kind of getting far ahead of myself here, but maybe it might just be what, for lack of a better word, Red America needs. If Florida can do it, then what's holding us back, right?
Yeah.
And if
it's
okay
it's strange too, because really when you're dealing with some of these what are really decisions and business decisions, looking at New York, for example, all the litigation around passing that law has created, what should be one of the biggest consumer markets outside of probably Florida and California has got to be New York. And the rollout for that has been just marred with litigation that has prevented anybody from being able to make good business decisions, coupled with, all kinds of bonus problems. So yeah, it is. I It'll be interesting to see whether Florida gets kind of bogged down with that, or whether, because you really can't predict which states are going to turn that into a problem and which ones just kind of let it sail through without much.
Yeah, I think as a closing thought, I think Florida will have a choice to make, and I think it'll have an option, or it'll have a choice between two visions of itself, right? I think if our government decides that they're going to hold on to this sort of nagging, this kind of attitude towards cannabis, and they just start looking for ways, subterfuges to limit what can be done, then I think, yeah, that maybe things will not be as the rollout will not be as great as it could be. But I think on the other hand, if we turn to our public image, free Florida, the least regulated state, less, lowest number of state employees per citizen, blah, blah, blah. If we turn to that and say, you know what, cannabis has been legalized, we're going to just stay out of it, just like we would with any other industry, then it could actually, I think it might actually work out quite well. And ironically, and I think this would be quite the irony, right? But ironically, cannabis could provide the Ron DeSantis's of the world with the perfect example of why their vision of governance and regulation is better. They could say, look, our cannabis market is better than New York's and California, and it's because of the way we do things here in Florida. A light touch. I'll leave it there, but I think that would be, that'd be great. That would be trippy. Yeah. Well, Aaron, thank you for stepping in as the interviewer. I enjoyed being on this side of the equation. Folks, next week we're going to have another one of our colleagues joining us. Gosong Fonkem from our trade and customs team is going to be talking to us about his practice. So be sure to join us then. And Aaron, thank you once again.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.